about her and our journey with her. And it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
So that's just up until when we got this diagnosis that rocked our world and definitely changed the trajectory.
Yeah. So welcome to the Parenting Podcast. My name is Charles.
I'm Monet.
And so today we're going to be talking really about what inspired us to do this particular podcast in general. And so it's around the idea of our daughter Anaya and her diagnosis. So I'm going to give the reins over to Monet to kind of kick us off, but talk us through just that whole experience from the beginning to where we are now.
Yeah, well, I think it's important for us to talk about the beginning and even from pregnancy.
Yeah.
And how I think we really emphasize throughout the pregnancy trying to be as healthy, even before we even got pregnant, trying to be healthy, the both of us.
Yep.
And then having a healthy pregnancy. And
Yes.
I was very almost stressed about, okay, I need to eat the right things. I need to
Outside
do
of pizza.
That was when the cravings hit. That's different. You gotta
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But really just saying, okay, I need to take these vitamins. I need to do this. We should be walking, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the pregnancy, aside from whatever symptoms I was experiencing, it was a healthy pregnancy.
Yep.
And every appointment we went to, it's everything checked off perfect.
Yep.
And there was only indications of great things, that she had a wonderful heartbeat and I was measuring well. And we didn't choose to do any testing, but we're young and healthy. And to be honest, if we did any prenatal testing, I think everything would have came back normal too.
I think you're the doctor, but I think you couldn't
Yeah.
really get into that.
And ultrasounds were great. Our anatomy ultrasound, beautiful. We did end up having that one thing on the ultrasound.
Was that her limbs were short? No, it was the heart. There was something in the heart.
Yeah.
And the limbs were short.
Yeah. Well, so she was measuring 50th percentile and everything, but her legs were 13th percentile. So I was why does she have such short legs? And there was technically nothing wrong with the leg length. So even still, things were fine. With the heart, there was that echogenic cardiac focus, which is something that just can happen. It can be associated with some medical problems, but it could also be completely normal, and plenty of babies have it. And we ended up having another ultrasound later and it resolved. So truthfully, everything was fine. Normal, great. Up until delivery, again, fine, normal, great. Easy delivery. Quick delivery, yeah. The only issue was that there was meconium in the fluid, but she didn't have any respiratory issues after that.
Nope.
Her APGAR scores, or when you're born, basically those numbers that indicate kind of the status of the baby in terms of breathing, color, respiration, tone. It's a scale of 1 to 10. And she got an 8 and a 9. So, you really don't get better than a 9. So again, everything was great. Even in the hospital, everything was great. We got home, everything was great. And then it's funny because remember, at the beginning of her life, we were oh my God, she's so advanced in everything.
Yeah, I know. We saw that video when she was, if I can find it, I'll throw it in here, when she was doing the tummy time and she was putting her head up. We're oh, cheering her on. We were very excited about that.
Yeah.
That was a big milestone for us because we, first-time parents, we don't know what we don't know. We're just excited when she does something new, she touches her toes, right?
Yeah. And even when we would go to the pediatrician, I feel we got very reassured that oh wow, oh she's doing that.
Yep.
She was sucking her thumb, or at least bringing her thumb to her mouth, and the pediatrician would be oh, she's doing that this early. And there was a couple things. We felt like, oh, is she teething already at some point? Because she was like having a lot of salivation and doing, so everything was like perfection. There is nothing to be concerned about in any way. I think you and I have different like times or indications when we thought,
It's not right.
so for you, I feel like I don't even really know for you when it hit.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I was naive because I didn't know what I didn't know. And you obviously were, working with children, newborns, so you kind of started to understand in comparison to what you were seeing, what Anaya was behind on track for. For me, I was like, oh, she's sleeping, she's babbling, she's doing a little bit of tummy time. She might not be where we want her to be, but okay, it's fine. So I was very like almost hands off in a way. I don't want to say hands off because I was very hands on, but very just kind of aloof. I was very just kind of, I don't know. I mean, maybe she'll get there eventually. People were telling us that, oh yeah, she'll get there. Don't worry about it. But yeah.
So what things were making you feel like, oh, she'll get there eventually? Because we went from thinking, oh, she's actually doing things early, like, or she's doing things right on time. There's no concern. So when did you feel like, because I think even those things, like you said, we were first-time parents, and although I was a pediatrician or just, getting into my role of pediatrics, I had learned a lot about not only child development, but I mean, in medical school, I knew certain milestones and certain things that should happen. And then also having friends on social media sites and seeing them with their babies and seeing timing of things that happen. Like there was a time for me when I felt like, I wonder why she's not doing this yet. Or, it's kind of like she slowed down in some of the development. But like, what was the first thing for you where you were like concerned and not just like, I think she's doing baby stuff?
That's a good question because I don't remember the exact day or the exact moment. I just remember a time period where I was getting very concerned, specifically because she was in daycare and all the other kids were moving up to a higher class or more advanced class because they could sit up on their own, they could crawl, they could roll over. And so that's when I got concerned. I was still being reassured by the daycare that, this happens all the time. There's babies that just catch up and eventually they'll be fine. Everyone has their own timeline. But I started to get really worried when we were doing therapies. We started doing physical therapy. And what was it? I just felt like there was a period where we just said, okay, the babies in her class are much younger than her now. And she just isn't advancing. Like she's plateauing, and it's very concerning. So I think it was that moment. I remember going to the daycare, basically sitting down with the director, telling them, just move her to the higher class. She'll learn by seeing the other kids crawling. Just do it. And so I forget what month that was. Do you remember?
No, I mean, so for me, I'll kind of go back to when for me I felt, and that was initially, to be honest, at around 6 months. Because I think until then, there is so many like nuances. Like if you're doing something at 3 months versus 4 months versus 5 months, but 6 months is like, I think a big milestone time where at least you expect the baby, I mean, they probably should have been rolling over from side to side for at least a month or two at that point. And then they should be able to sit up and like stay sitting up by themselves. And she wasn't doing either of those things. And then we started like coming up with theories. And even like family would chip in theories like, well, maybe it's because she's like really chubby.
Her glasses are in the way.
Well, yeah. Then she ended up getting glasses at 7 months. But I think at first it was like, she's really chubby, so maybe that's why she's not really rolling. But I'm like, I've seen like babies who are obese, who are like running down the street. And glasses, I mean, it wasn't like the glasses were stopping her.
Block, yeah.
And that made me I think that was another red flag too. Like, I know some babies have glasses, but I think it was when things started adding up. Like, okay, so she's not rolling yet. In and of itself, maybe that's not a huge deal. Okay, she's not sitting up yet. Okay. Okay, she needs glasses, and most babies don't need glasses. It's like, okay. And then it started becoming, wow, okay, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months. She has not one tooth that has come out. And again, that's something else. Like, oh yeah, some babies, like it takes them a little while for their first tooth. But I'm like, so how does she have all of these like interesting things that are
There's too many
late?
things piling up, almost making us feel that this is not normal. Like, this is not normal. And
Yeah.
when people kept reassuring us, it was like, no, this is scary. There's something wrong. So
Yeah. And people were reassuring us, I think, on the one-off things, like these anecdotal stories of, oh, my child didn't learn to walk until they were 17 months. Or my child wasn't really babbling much until 9 months. And I think all of those things in silos are fine. But again, it was the culmination.
yes.
And so we actually did work very proactively, and our pediatrician also was really great in that, and like the encouragement of, hey, you might want to start just to get her in some therapies. Like, it doesn't hurt if she's just a little delayed in things. That might help kickstart, whatever. So we did start in the therapies. And again, at this point, there's still nothing that like we know definitively. We just knew like she needed some extra support and maybe help in developing these skills. So we had her in the therapies for some time. And I feel like at that point, she was maybe 10 months old.
10 months? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
when was that?
Like maybe December.
December. Yeah, I was going to say December.
Yeah.
So December. Yes, December.
Okay. So we were doing that, but like the wheels in our head were like turning.
Yeah, we knew something. Something wasn't right. We didn't know what it was. And
Yeah.
so...
And I think it's like everything can cross your mind because it's okay. Is it just that she's globally delayed for whatever reason? And is that something that she can overall overcome and it end up being not a big deal after a couple of years? Is there something syndromic? Is there something genetic? Like, who knows?
And from your perspective as a doctor, just to pause real quickly, your mind must have been racing because medical school, still beginning stages of residency, you're seeing different types of patients. You're probably getting a little, like, how did you keep from that, if you weren't doing this, from your mind going to like the worst potential situation?
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is when you're a parent in the medical field, you can go one of two ways. So you could either go like, oh my gosh, because I know these things exist, she has this. It's almost like that hypochondriac mind that it's like that thing I learned on day 12 of med school. It must be that. But then I think also the other side, which I think happened to me actually throughout the pregnancy and everything, was like, my baby is not going to have anything like that, any of those scary big bad things. And I remember when I was specifically like in my first year of medical school, and I would come home and tell you, oh my gosh, we learned about all of these crazy diseases, disorders, things people are born with. And I was like, the fact that somebody could be born and be a healthy human being with all body parts functioning and et cetera, I was like, that is miraculous because of the crazy things I learned. Like, medical school will scare you.
Yeah.
But fast forward to when we were having our child, I was just not expecting anything crazy that I learned about. So even when she was having these weird things, I feel like I had rose-colored glasses in a way. Like, she's not going to have one of these weird or rare situations. Like, there's no way. So at first I was thinking, okay, maybe she's just delayed. Maybe there's like a reason why she's not having that right now. Like, maybe it's fine. Because I think it also, people can see different disorders, illnesses, and you feel like you know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Like a child that either has distinct facial features or body parts or something else that you think clues you in, or something during the pregnancy must have went wrong, something on a blood test or something must have sparked like alarms. And there was nothing like that. So there was nothing to make me think she has some crazy reason why she has this. And I think that too was like reassuring me that no, this is just something that's gonna like pass.
Yeah, and I think, and I remember this, it started jogging. My memory was jogged when you were talking about that. But I remember I had Googled something, and we were in our apartment. You remember this, right?
Yeah.
And I think you were on the phone with your uncle or someone, and I was just randomly Googling stuff based upon the different symptoms, quote unquote, that Anaya had. And I remember just, I think I fell on the floor.
Yeah.
And I cried, literally cried, because you just don't want your kids to have a life different than what you want for them, if that makes sense. And we'll get into it a little bit, but it just scared me because I'm like, what is this? Like, you put the symptoms in Google and then you get like all of these different potentials, and it was scary. And I cried, and we spoke about it. And at that point, we still didn't know what the situation was or what the diagnosis was. But
and I remember when we were speaking about it, and you were saying, "Oh, like this, whatever diagnosis you read," and I was like, "No, it wouldn't be that." And like you just think about when you learned about it. And like the pictures and the descriptions and the symptoms. And I'm sitting there like, no, she doesn't have that. I was like reassuring you like, no, it's none of those things. Then it came to my mind like, what is the worst thing this could be? And it's so interesting how your mind like frames things when it's with your child. Cause I was like, oh God, the worst thing this could be. Oh my gosh, I hope it's not this. But it got to a point where I was like, well, I wonder if it's like autism. Because she had these delays and some behaviors that were, I think, stereotypical of like autistic behaviors. And you know, autism is a spectrum disorder. And so there are kids with autism that have varying degrees of functioning, symptoms, etc. So I was like, well, maybe she has some early signs of autism. And that's what I think I was kind of clinging to. Which even that is hard to grasp and think about for your child.
So fast forward then to, I guess, getting the genetic test and then...
Yeah, so actually the part when we were getting into the diagnosis part. So I think enough time was passing. Yeah. She had been in therapies for a while, and it's like, okay, there is something more here. And at that point, we had seen other specialists. We went and saw a neurologist, seeing like, is there something neurologically wrong? Because even talking to our therapist, like, oh, she had hypotonia. That word had come up. I was like, okay, so we're looking up, why would she just have hypotonia? And again, that was another weird thing that she had, that it's like, why? So we went to see a neurologist. Oh, everything's fine. They didn't see anything that was problematic. Oh, and in the middle of this, she had that one episode that one day where we thought she just had a seizure.
That was July,
yeah. So she was like 5 months old, and we took her to the emergency room, and she actually saw a neurologist at that point in the hospital, got an EEG, or basically the test, seeing her brain waves and functioning, seeing if she had any abnormal brain activity or seizure activity. Everything was normal on that. So we felt reassured even from that. But we followed up with this neurologist later down the line. Oh no, nothing's neurologically wrong. Yeah, she has hypotonia. And yeah, she has developmental delays. Okay. So basically the hypotonia is the lower muscle tone. And that is related to eventually what we ended up finding out that she had. But, you could have hypotonia with a number of things. And again, that lined up with autism too, because that could be linked to autism. And then it was like, well, let's just go to other doctors. So we went to, next I think is when we went to developmental behavioral pediatrics.
Yeah, and I think that is when that, I remember that. I literally, my heart sank because at that point, we knew something was wrong. We knew something was wrong. This wasn't something that was typical. And so.
Wasn't just delays.
Wasn't just delays. And so the doctor was so sweet. And the way she looked at us, I knew she knew something was wrong, but didn't want to say it, didn't know what it could be. And so she used language like, so what you want to do is just try to keep her calm. Something that, when she said it, like literally, I felt like that Malcolm X movie with Denzel Washington where he's just like, the chaos is happening and he's just looking and things are happening. That's how I felt. I felt like I was in literally the Twilight Zone. I was just in disbelief, but in belief. Couldn't really process anything. Tried not to cry again. Mm-hmm. And from there, we still didn't know. And so then that's when we had genetic tests done. Mm-hmm. And that had to have been, when was that in?
That was like when she was like just April. About a year.
April? No, it was February.
Yeah,
February,
a year,
March.
a little over a year.
Yeah.
Like this was this whole process that basically kicked off at around 6 months when our first little alarm went off. Mm-hmm. And then just through everything, waiting for appointments. Like these people are booked and busy. Like developmental behavioral pediatrics, genetics, like all of that. Busy people, neurology. Yep. It's hard to get these appointments. And luckily enough for me, working at the hospital and knowing these physicians actually myself and like, having some internal relationships with these people, I was even able to sometimes ask questions. That was really a godsend because I can't even imagine how much longer it would have taken us to find out the information. But yeah, it was about a year that we finally got the genetic swabbing done. Mm-hmm. So we did have to get genetic testing of Anaya, just to see, like, hey, we'll just run a test. Like, we don't know what we're looking for, but this tests for a whole bunch of different genetic syndromes, conditions, and maybe we'll find something. Mm-hmm. And we weren't really expecting to.
I mean, I was like, there's really, like, I knew something was wrong, but I didn't think it would be something that would be like genetic.
Yeah, and I felt like with the genetic test, like if anything, maybe we'd see something. I mean, to be honest, the likelihood that anybody will do a genetic test and find something even on them, and you think, I'm completely normal, healthy, I don't have anything, you can easily find something random that doesn't even necessarily mean anything. So I thought if we find something, like I didn't think it was going to be some known condition that's like this big, scary, bad thing. I was like, this is probably not going to tell us. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe that's still looking through the rose-colored glasses of, this is my daughter. There's no way there's something crazy going on. But we got it. Mm-hmm. And then there's that waiting game because these genetic tests don't come back the next day. So we had to wait weeks.
Yeah.
And then.
So I remember at this point we had a nanny, didn't have a nanny. I was working from home, but also trying to still do an eyes therapy, still kind of take care of her throughout the day. Oh yeah,
because at this point we had stopped the daycare.
Yeah, we had stopped the daycare. We stopped the daycare February, right after her birthday, or right before her birthday. So walking her on our normal walking routine, and with our normal walking routine, and get a call from the hospital, and they tell me that she had either Angelman Syndrome or Prader-Willi. And my heart sank. I still remember exactly where I was. And literally the distance away from the house where we were, I wanted to go back home, but either way, I could finish the walk. It's the same distance, or I can just turn back and go back home. Same distance. So I just continued with the walk. But I remember just, again, having an out-of-body experience because first off, I didn't know what either one of these syndromes were. didn't know but I started Googling, and as I was Googling on my phone, my heart just kept sinking and sinking and sinking. And at this time, I was trying to call Monet. She was at work. She didn't answer. And then I called you, told you, we cried.
Yeah, I feel like, so I was leaving work and saw that I had a missed call from you, and actually another number too, which was the hospital trying to call me. So then I called you back on my ride home.
Yep.
I was like, oh, is everything good? And like expecting it, like I didn't expect that we were getting the results that day. So I was just like, okay, he's calling me. How's the day going?
It was not going good that day. And so we spoke about it. Monet knew vaguely what it was. And so, she's...
Both of those syndromes
Yeah.
pretty well. I mean, I remember studying them in medical school.
Yeah.
And I just knew. I was like, oh, no, there's no way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the most heartbreaking experience I've ever had in my entire life. And sure for Monet it was too. And it was a dark time. That was a dark time. We told our family, just immediate family, and that was tough. They were kind of in shock.
Yeah, and it was interesting because it's like one of those moments of, I mean, should you be relieved that you know? Because this whole time it's like, what is this? Why? Da-da-da. But then it's also like, come on, we could have found out anything. I guess the whole time I was hoping to find out, for whatever reason, she just has delays in hypotonia and no teeth by the age of 1 and weird stuff with her eyes, and the list goes on. But it's all fine. But then when we found this out, it was like, this can't be it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so at that point, we still didn't know which one it was because they had to do further testing. So even going through that was pretty scary. So we were dealing with this for a couple of weeks before we actually got the official diagnosis of Angelman Syndrome.
Yeah.
And, okay.
And, it was crazy because that whole time we're like kind of looking at both, but kind of conflicted. Like, should we be going down these rabbit holes? Should we be looking them up and then starting to feel and like form opinions about one or the other?
Which we did.
Yeah, we did. And I didn't want to.
We shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, no.
But it was just,
we
had to know. I mean, this was just, we were crushed, absolutely crushed.
And then ultimately finding out that it was Angelman syndrome, then I had to actually get genetic testing myself just to make sure it wasn't something that I carried. And this being our first child, we had no idea if this was something that could result again and again. And ultimately, we found out that it was just a very chance, random thing that happened, and that there was no specific reason, which just is such it feels like such a cruel thing that it just the most rare thing could just happen and then happen to her. And I feel like we should do maybe even a part 2 or something, a video talking about all about Angelman.
Yeah, but do you want to kind of give a very simplistic, in layman's terms, what it is?
Yeah, so pretty much it is a neurological genetic syndrome that is related to chromosome 15. And what it basically is a missing part of chromosome 15. And in this part that is missing, it is responsible for a lot of normal functions we have. And again, it's a neurological condition. So a lot of them are functions related to the brain, our nervous system, our neurons. That's why she has some of these symptoms like hypotonia or lower muscle tone. And sometimes she would even get these little tremors and things related to the nervous system. And there's a whole bunch of different functions in this area of this chromosome. And so there's so many different symptoms and things that are related to it. But basically, bird's eye view, a neurologic condition that is genetically based on the specific part of a chromosome. There's different ways you can get it, mutated part of the chromosome, missing part. And she got it because in development, this part of her chromosome was just deleted. And again, we can talk about it further.
Yeah, we'll have a separate video where we can go into details of that, but we will at least maybe put a link
Yes.
in this video so that you could, if you want to know more about it, there's a great organization, a couple of great organizations, but one in particular that we are heavily involved in is the Angelman Syndrome Foundation.
Yes.
So we'll get more into that later, but I think really just kind of summing everything together is this was one of the most heartbreaking.
The most.
Yeah, probably the most. Like it crushed me. I never felt broken the way I have on the day and this weeks after getting that diagnosis. Never felt that way, that broken before in my life. And so it was just, you felt that everything that you had hoped for your child just go away. And we cried many, many nights, and sometimes we still do cry, to be honest. We're not going to sit here and sugarcoat that we're fine 100% of the time. There's some tough days, there's some easy days, but every once in a while we have our moments where you just hold her, and she's awesome, by the way. We'll have to, continue to kind of keep you abreast of videos and even bring her on one of these podcasts. She probably have some things to say, but yeah, it just crushed me. But I think if anything, and this could be another podcast episode too, it made me a better parent. It made us better parents. We became extremely intentional. We were intentional before that because we knew that something was wrong. So we knew that we had to literally turn over every single stone to get everything that she needs to make reach these milestones. And
even
changed.
before that, like we were intentional from the beginning. Like I said, even when we were pregnant, our whole thing was like, how can we be the best and give the best to our child?
Yeah.
Even before our child was born or conceived.
Yeah. And so that's what inspired us to do this podcast, is to understand that every kid has a level of potential. And we believe that as parents, it's our job to help them reach that potential. And even as parents, as individuals, we have potential. We have potentials as our potential as parents. Yeah. And so how do we flex our muscles, stretch our wings to be the best parents for Anaya, for our soon-to-be boy or girl, we don't know yet. And if this video is coming out afterwards, well, that's a whole nother thing. But anyways, how do you help your kids be the best they can be? And so that's really what inspired this podcast, and we're passionate about this stuff, y'all. We don't play when it comes to Anaya's development, getting her the best care, the best therapist, the best nanny, the best foods, the best toys, the best equipment. Like we don't play, and I know you parents out there don't play as well. And so we wanted to create a community where we can just be honest and open with you all about our experience and the things we're struggling with, but also the things that we're excelling at, in hopes that you all listening can benefit from it and maybe comment so we can learn something from you. But that's kind of why we started this thing. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, it was all about her and our journey with her. And it's a lifelong journey. Yeah. So that's just up until when we got this diagnosis that rocked our world and definitely changed the trajectory of everything in our lives and our parenting for her. But, it's a evolving experience and life, and we don't know what the future will hold. And truthfully, no parent does. So even if you don't end up getting a diagnosis like this or any diagnosis in general, like you don't know what the future holds for your child at all. And so I think you can have these visions, you can have these plans, you can expect and hope. And of course, you always hope for the best. We just got this news earlier on in her life that did change things. But I think really, at the end of the day, you never know what the future holds, good or bad. And so you do the best you can. And
Be grateful.
Yeah.
I think this is humbling for us.
yeah.
It just humbled us. But I think the key here, y'all, is setting expectations, right? Don't let labels, because really what the diagnosis was, just a label, because we had not changed, we hadn't skipped a beat since the very beginning.
Yeah.
If anything, we got more intense with wanting her to be the best she can be. But having high expectations, letting them know you have high expectations, and have them meet those expectations that's what I've been learning. And
Yeah, and I think seeing your child for who they are and not what they have or what they've been diagnosed with.
I love that quote. That's good.
Yeah.
T-shirt. Put that in.
Because I really feel like that for us, like we knew Anaya. So when these things were slowly trickling, it's like we know our baby girl, like she's awesome. We knew she was bomb from the start.
Yep.
And like
cute.
she was so cool. The cutest ever. No bias. But like just everything was awesome about her. And so finding this out, it's heartbreaking, of course, and heart-wrenching, and you think about the future, but we knew who she was in the present.
Yes.
And I think I say that I'm grateful that we didn't find out that there was anything wrong before she was born or way early on, because I think we would have had more fears about, oh my gosh, what will she be? Like when she comes out, what will she?
It would have shattered us. We would have.
Yeah.
And again, I think there's people who do get the diagnosis
beforehand,
and so I think no matter what, it's you will do you move mountains for your kid. And I think that's just the theme is, end of the day, this person who came from you, who's of you, who you love, will thrive.
Yeah.
No matter what.
And
at all costs.
Yeah. And that's why it's important to see them as a person, whether you found out the diagnosis before or not, because it doesn't matter. It really does not, because they are who they are. And so I'm glad we got to at least know her before that became any type of cloud, whether it's subconscious or not, because we knew her and we knew she was awesome. And so we didn't have to think about, oh God. And so I definitely do encourage all parents, wherever in your journey that you might find out something, to like really think about, like, I know my child, I love my child, they are this person, and they might have this circumstance. We all have circumstances, no matter what they are, but seeing your child, and we'll get more into that into the future, but I think that's really what motivates you to reach your parenting potential, that we're so excited to talk even more about. So I'm so glad we had this discussion today.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is we have discussions like this all the time once we put Anaya down, and so we wanted to be able to talk about this topic because we've had so many conversations. We just had a conversation yesterday with your parents about this. And so, we just wanted to take the time to really, in a very short amount of time, walk you through months of just stuff going on leading up to the diagnosis. So we appreciate you for listening.
Yes.
We love you, and we are definitely excited to take you on this journey, because there's so much we've learned that we want to share. And really, it's we want to learn from you all too. And so we're going to continue being transparent about what we made mistakes on, what we learned and made adjustments from. And that's pretty much it for this episode. So definitely please subscribe if you haven't. We're going to try to pump out as much of these conversations as possible in hopes that you benefit from it. You share it with your close network of people. Any parents you know that, if you're not a parent, or if you are a parent, share with those parents. And just let us know what you think in the comment section. So we want to have a conversation with you too. So
Absolutely. Love to hear from anyone and everyone. And so we really do hope you enjoyed, and we can't wait until our next talk.
Until next time, y'all, reach your potential.
That's right.
Peace.